Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's your boy Nigel Sanderson, and I got my boy Sir William here with me today. What's good?
Hey, how's it going? It's going pretty good. Going pretty good.
Chilling, chilling. So yeah, Will and I, specifically Will, definitely wanted to talk about VFX and are they necessary? And sometimes they might not be necessary, I guess. I'm hungry, so I'm not making sense. So let's get into it, man. Um, so I'm glad you brought this up, Will, because I would I just for the first time watched the extended 4 hour versions of Lord of the Rings.
You
And I
watched the
was
whole
like,
thing, you sat through that? God damn.
I didn't sit through them straight. Like I would pick one movie a day and I would chop it up in hours and watch it.
Mm.
And then I started watching The Hobbit. I just finished the second Hobbit movie. And I was like, man, there's a big difference with the visual style and mainly because of CGI. When they were shooting the first Lord of the Rings movies, it was like 1999 and technology wasn't where it is today, VFX especially. And they had to use a lot of miniatures and looking behind the scenes videos and looking at the finished product, you're just like, man, like that's a mastercraft because they have to track the camera motions into the miniatures and they have to superimpose the real actors into the miniatures. And then the Hobbit comes along and there's nothing but like bad CGI. And when you read the behind the scenes and you watch the behind the scenes, you realize the CGI is bad because there was too many last minute additions, too many things changed at the last minute. And Will,
Yes, yes.
when is CGI necessary and when is it not?
Well, and to be started with, CGI is like only good when you have time for it. Like the better, more time you have for CGI, the better it looks. So
Yeah.
usually, like in the Hobbit, like you said, they have like no time, or like Lord of the Rings. It turns out bad because you need time to go through that. It's a long process on doing composition or compositing. I mean,
Right.
is
Right.
very difficult. Motion capture takes forever. Um, even
Especially
Lord of the
when The Hobbit came out, it was like 2010 they were shooting those movies, 2011.
Oh yeah, even like Lord of the Rings back then, it's like they had some weird masking techniques. I saw the behind the scenes of it. Um, it was just so much that wasn't good just because they didn't have the technology back then. I know in
Right.
like the earlier Star Wars, they had like these matte painting where people like painted the background on the scenes and all that, and that just probably took hours and hours, if that. And
Yeah.
I want to bring up Dune because recently we saw Dune. Not that recent, but it was like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And Dune,
Before you
I
get
didn't
into
realize
the
it was
VFX about Dune, did you like it
yeah.
as a whole?
So I read the first book of Dune, and
Mhm.
the book I actually liked a lot more than the movie, which is, I guess a lot of people say that.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, that's pretty much standard. I mean, the book is always
yeah,
going to be better than the movie, man.
yeah,
You
but
know?
the movie it seemed very slow. It didn't get as far as I thought it would. But it was still a
Yeah.
good movie. It was nice. Not too many bad parts in it, honestly. It visually looked good compared to like the older one. I didn't realize it was a older Dune
Oh yeah.
until I
Yeah.
looked more into it. So it was a good movie. Honestly, it was good. I wish there was like a little bit more to it, but if
So
they went
yeah,
in, see,
back to your
yeah.
point about the VFX of Dune. What were you gonna
So
say about
VF,
that?
so VFX, I feel like there's a lot of empty space in Dune. Like there's a lot of using the same elements too. It was like a lot of blank, like
Yeah.
there's buildings, but then like there's open field areas, and then they use the same buildings, same trees, like multiple times in certain scenes. I know there
Mhm.
was like one scene which I think it was towards the beginning when like one of the trees was on fire, but another tree was next to it that was on fire, looked exactly the same. Like they just copy and pasted it over. So I was like, oh snap, okay. But yeah, a lot of the stuff with the visual effects was pretty good with what they did with it. The space scene that actually showed the spaceship in this movie, so that was really cool.
When I watched
It
Dune,
was
and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not too much of a VFX guy, but the thing about Dune is I feel like it was like keep it simple, stupid was the theme of the VFX. You know, a lot of
Yes.
these modern movies, like now it's 2022, and I feel like a lot of these movies just want to they have CGI and they just want to put so much into it and just like put so much on the audience. But look at this texture, look at this, and da da da. And it's like I don't need all that. It's like visual dissonance or something. Like it's just too much information. Whereas Dune,
Yeah.
it felt like the placement of VFX was very meticulous, and it was like we're only going to do what we need to do, and maybe that was a money thing, but hey, limitations breed creativity, and for me, the VFX kind of worked, especially for such a sci-fi driven movie, you know, because Dune
Yeah,
can
that's
be
for sure.
kind of out there.
Yeah, that's true. I know the one part that I actually found interesting was the way like when they get hit, um, they had like this shield around them, which is like very simple making shield just around each character, like that slows down bullets or like I forgot how they explained it, but it was
Well,
so
it's kind
simple.
of
Just like
confusing.
yeah, it was kind of confusing to begin with, honestly. But as soon as like someone gets close, like changes to red, it was just, like good color swap. It was just very simple. It worked. I got most of what was happening. I
Right.
just need someone to explain it, but it was good. It
Even
did
the
not
guys
need
on Quarter Crew was like, this is a pretty simple After Effects effect.
yeah,
And
right.
it made me think of what you said because you said it a while ago when you first saw the movie. It was just like there was a lot of reused simple assets. Like maybe that was their whole idea was just be like, hey, let's take these simple things and make them work in a like I don't know $200 million blockbuster movie and put time into things that need to be done, like the spaceships and like the battle scene with
Oh yeah,
that was crazy. Just all the stuff going on with the shields and people fighting, and there had to been so much tracking when it was like the one group was fighting the other group and the shields were just going wonky, and I'm like, you
yeah.
can't really
On the
tell what's going
staircase
on.
area. Yeah,
But I'm like, that must have been a nightmare for whoever had to track all those guys and all right, be like, all right, so these two guys I'm gonna do today and track them and put the shields on. Tomorrow I'll
yeah,
do these two guys. Like it must have
yeah.
been like
Yeah,
grueling.
that's what I mean. Like the time it takes for all that. It's just like it has to be like a few different people working on the same scene.
Yeah.
Essentially, if there's multiple people having that same effect going on,
Mm.
and the CGI looked pretty good actually in most of those scenes with the in Dune. The worm in the sand that looked really good.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
seemed
yeah,
like
yeah. That I feel like they were working on that worm from like pre-production to the end of post-production. Like I feel like they had like a dedicated team, and then when everybody else was done with their shots, they was like, all right, come on board to this to the worm, man. I feel like they were working on it. I think I read it somewhere that uh Denis Villeneuve was working on the design of that worm for the longest time. And
yeah, and it's like
it
even
looked
like the
amazing.
teeth, even like the teeth in it, like the sand particles, all that. Like when it was coming up and like the shaking of it. Oh my god, it
Yes.
actually looked really real.
It looks so good. I like the fact that they made it look like an iris, like the eye, like a
Yeah.
human eye, and it was like, hey, looking at you, and then it just goes away. I mean, I wished to your credit, like you said, there's a lot of like empty space, you know, visually
Hmm.
and story wise. Like there's so much lore in Dune, but not much went on in the movie. It was. I don't know if you've seen this movie, The Green Knight, that came out last year. I actually liked it. But it's one of those like auteur films where it's mainly like just to be pretty type of films. And
Okay.
man, visually it looks great. And it kind of reminded me of Dune. Like I felt like Dune was just like, hey, look how visual stunning this is. And I'm wondering if Dune was just a kind of like a test movie because
Mm,
they weren't green lit for the sequels. You know, generally for these type of movies, they just shoot them back to back, or they already
yeah.
have two sequels scheduled. so that the actors can know in the future, oh yeah, a year from now we're going to be filming the other one. But Warner Brothers didn't greenlit the sequel, so I kind of felt like he was testing the waters with this film. Like, oh, look at the visual style I want to do. Look how I pull back on some of the craziness and make it more grounded, even though it's a space movie. You know,
Yeah,
so
make more story driven and whatnot. Yeah, it's
yeah, and
very good
like
that way.
how he designed the ships and everything seemed minimalistic, and I feel like it really worked. You know, it was really dope. I read an article where someone said like Arrival and Blade Runner were
Mm,
Denis Villeneuve's um like training for this movie because he always wanted to do this the Dune series. And I can't wait for the next
really.
ones, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to like greenlit that. I can't since I need to finish reading the other books, but yeah, it's looking really interesting. Um,
Mm.
honestly. And do you have like any other? What's your favorite like CGI heavy movie, visual effects? I mean,
Oh man. Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to be heavy into CGI. Um,
mhm.
I gotta give a shout out to Godzilla versus Kong that
Oh,
came out 2020, I think.
around
I
there,
did
yeah.
see that in theaters. I did see that in theaters, and I was like, yes, yes. I was like, I don't care about the humans. I don't care about nothing but Kong versus Godzilla. And man, did they deliver, man. Like the visual effects were amazing in that. Amazing. They killed it. I'm like, they must have been working on this movie forever, man. Because you got water out. I think they fight like three times. They fight in the daytime, the
Oh, really?
nighttime, underwater, on top of battleships. I'm like, yo, this is amazing. Like this is amazing. And I don't care that the physics might not be there, where a giant lizard and giant gorilla are fighting on top of battleships like they're just roller skates. But I don't care. Like it was, like, it was amazing. Like the visual effects were so crazy, and I feel like that's a movie you have to see in theaters. And Pacific Rim, I'm a big fan of Pacific Rim.
Oh, love that.
The sequel is okay, but the first one, I know a lot of people complain that these movies, a lot of these CGI movies, take place in like the rain and the dark. Man, I don't care, man. It adds such visual elements to it, and I'm not a VFX guy, but I gotta imagine making giant robots react to water that's dropping from the sky has to be difficult.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. Transformers, I don't know how they did most of the time, but
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say Transformers next, man. Oh my
yeah, yeah. It's like it's funny because when I went to school for video motion graphics.
god.
So I had a lot of those classes, and every time I was in class, one of the teachers always was like, "Okay, if you want to add like a lot of visual effects, add like smoke, make it dark. So if you mess up, you just hide your mistakes in like the smoke and whatnot." Which like every movie I think does very well, or a lot of movies do. Like they used to always make it dark, or like if it's like a horror movie like monsters or something, it's always freaking dark as anything,
Tell
and
me
there's a lot
this,
of smoke.
man. Like, tell me this. Like, the audience always complains, like, all these monsters are hidden by smoke and rain and dark. But when like we both went to the same school, like in
Mm-hmm.
our film classes, they teach us like if you can incorporate rain in your shots, incorporate like fog or smoke. And I'm not talking about VFX shots. I'm just talking about regular shots with
Yeah, yeah,
camera, because it adds depth to the frame. It adds like a level of like, I don't know, like it makes your picture adds more depth. It's not as flat as it would be if you have like a little bit of haze in there, a little bit of light flares and stuff like that. So I'm like those people who complain, like, oh, those giant robots, those giant lizards are in the dark and it's raining. I'm like, shut up. Like, watch
yeah,
the movie. Like,
yeah.
come
It's
on.
like this again with that. There's like necessary points where that's okay, and like there's not when that's not okay. It becomes too much. Like
Yeah.
I remember I was watching Stars or something the other day. Like every show on there is just so dark, which it seems very unnecessary for that for a lot of these like drama shows.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like they're always dark. They're always talking in the dark. I'm like, those are the type of points. If you're just talking in the dark, I just want to see your face. I want to see mouth movements or something. I just can't be staring at nothing like silhouettes.
I feel like when I used to watch the CW, a lot of their shows were like that. But I
Yeah.
guess because they're like superhero slash magical slash thriller shows, it kind of calls to that. But they were also very soap opera shows, so
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But so what are your top like? Oh yeah, yeah. Shout out to Blade Runner 2 for their VFX. Blade Runner 2049. Even the original Blade Runner, which had to use miniatures. It's amazing what they did if you watch the behind the scenes for that. But so what are your top CGI movies for VFX?
Oh my god. So mine, I think I did like many reports on this movie, Inception. So like
Yo,
every class I get, I can write a report on a movie. I always pick Inception and just rewatch it over and over again, just
right, right.
analyze how they make that movie. Um,
And
a
then
lot of
Doctor
stuff like
Strange just try to copy it.
yeah, it's like even like the one scene like when the building that hotel and it's like spinning. It's really just not even that's actually happening. It's like a whole building they made or like whole house they made.
So you're a VFX guy. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Because I was
Yeah.
talking to a buddy of mine, Mike, who's actually been on the podcast, and he was talking about how Doctor Strange tried to do what Inception did visually, but he felt like it failed because it felt like Doctor Strange did too much. They had too many, especially that element, that scene where they're in the mirror realm and they're running
Yes.
away from the other guys and everything's turning and stuff. He was like, there was just too much going on. Whereas Inception, it was more like necessary stuff that was going on to further push the story. Whereas Doctor Strange was too much going on. I kind of felt the same way. I was like, what's going on? I've watched Doctor Strange a couple of times. I'm like, yo, this is too much going on. Do you feel the same way? Like, did you watch Doctor Strange and think that?
Yeah, so in Doctor Strange, everything happens way too quick when they go into the mirror realm. Like all these things are changing, and it doesn't make sense why they're changing. It's not really explained like why things are moving. Like in Inception, because Inception they have a point like, okay, your mind's doing this, and if something becomes too noticeable, then this happens. Like it comes distorted in a way. But
Right,
in like Doctor Strange, everything just moves so quick, and like you start seeing like reflections and doubles, and it's like you're trying to almost get hypnotized in this movie because everything's like spinning and all these effects are just happening at once, which
right.
could be them trying to hide any mistakes they did. Because I know they probably didn't do any like it's not like a real scene they built or anything like that. So it's all CGI,
Right,
and
right. It's too
with that much
much.
CGI happening, it could be too much and could have to like have little mistakes that they just keep getting rid of. But
True, man. It was the mirror realm. That scene was kind of confusing, man. It was just all over the place, and stuff keeps changing in the foreground and the background, and he's going
mm-hmm.
here, he's going. I was like, what's going on? Whereas Inception, it was kind of on the nose, and I think I think Inception, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Inception was Christopher Nolan's peak, and
Yeah.
he knew in that movie when to use practical effects and then when to use CGI. Whereas I know I keep going back to this, but Tenant,
Mm,
it was kind of like he's getting a little too up on himself, and he has people doing things backwards when they could have just been CGI. He's training the stunt guys to drive cars backwards, and the other cars are for. It's too much, and I'm like, and he's blowing up a real plane. I'm like, why? Like sometimes
yeah.
I'm like, why? Like this shot took like 3 months when it could have took like maybe a month rendering or something. Like
Yeah.
it's just too
Mostly just
much.
rendering.
Like Inception felt like he hit his peak, and there's something to be said about um directors when like they just hit They just put out hits back to back, and then they get to be like, oh, everything I touch is gold, so this is going to be great. No,
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I definitely think he was feeling himself a little bit too much at times,
on
but
Tenet.
definitely Inception was definitely a good mix of uh, practical and just visual effects
Oh
in
yeah,
general.
definitely.
And as an actor, how do you feel about visual effects in films? Do you think acting's become worse because all the green screen, all the blue screen stuff, they can't visualize certain things? That's why I've been reading about in articles about how it could be more difficult nowadays.
Um, I think technology wise, it's definitely working in the favor of the actor and the director because we have stuff like the volume now,
Mm,
um, where you can actually see the visual effects in real time. You know, and also I was watching the behind the scenes of Shang Chi, and like that little that little mythical creature that
oh,
Ben Kinsley he was calling Morris. Yeah, he was like Morris.
sure.
And
Yeah.
you know, back in the day when these visual effects were start coming on, nothing would be on set and he would just have to react to it. Whereas they actually had a pole and it looked like a mold of the creature, and they had a guy who was controlling the pole, and he would act with it. And Ben Kinsley was talking about how like it was easy for him because he was reacting to something, and the person who was operating Morse was given a character, and he said he built a rapport with the operator, so throughout filming it was easier for him to react. I think
Mm,
the issue is with uh some of these VFX is a lot of times you'll get some directors or crew who are just pedal to the metal for whatever reason. Maybe it's the studio rushing them, but nothing is planned out. Uh, the characters that they're reacting to are not even built or designed. So actors have to literally act to nothing. And sometimes,
yeah.
like reading the behind the scenes about like Endgame, reading the behind the scenes of the original Lord of the Rings, um, sometimes actors are legitimately frustrated because um, the director's like, "Hey, we got to shoot this scene, but we haven't cast the role yet. We haven't designed the monster yet. So you're just gonna have to act it out." And it's like
Mm,
that's frustrating because um, that's why I feel like acting on stage is so awesome. For me personally, I like to act on stage more than I like to act on screen because
right.
you always have things to act off of too. You always have props. You can't go on stage and but just like pretend something's there. I mean, unless it's supposed to be like something is invisible or whatever, you have rehearsal for that. You have in your mind that that's going to happen, but you always have the information that you need. Whereas some of these productions, they're just like, oh, we don't have this script ready, so just act. Or a lot of that happens with the CW shows that they have. The script is not even finished, but they're on set and they're like, hey, we got to finish the scene, so just do whatever. It's like that's frustrating for an
Yeah, it's very
actor.
different.
You like it, as an actor, it's kind of like playing tennis by yourself. That's no fun. You're not going to learn from that. Your training is not going to increase with that. It's like playing tennis with a great tennis coach or a great opponent. You learn from that. You get adrenaline from that. When you have a great actor to act opposite of, it gives you that adrenaline and you're like, oh man, this was great. But if you're acting with nothing, at least give me like a little green dot or something, and
Shit.
not only a green dot to act off of so I can get my eye line correct, but if you have like a render of what the creature or whatever's supposed to look like a concept drawing, like give me something. And I think we are starting to see a lot of directors and crew have better relationships with VFX artists. They'll have a VFX consultant on scene because there's a lot of sets now that actually have things that are built and then they'll have green or blue screen
Right.
merged with that so that the actor can have something to play off of. And I think we're definitely having a milestone. I just wish that the the environment for VFX was a little better, you know, when it comes to the workers, the VFX workers with their pay and their working environment. I just wish it was a little better, and that's something that Hollywood still has to work on.
Yeah, like the time given for them to do stuff is very short.
Yeah,
They like as soon as they finish the film, they just give them like a few months of that and like get to send it out. So that's why they're like at the end credits, there's like 20 billion different visual effects studios, different artists, because they just keep
because
sending stuff
one
out to
just can't do it anymore.
yeah, it's like you can't one studio just can't do it. So it's like sent to multiple things that like specialize in this, or like explosions, and this guy specialized in like gore or whatever.
Yeah,
So
some
it's very
VFX
different.
houses will get hired just because they'll just get hired just to do the water. Other ones
Just yeah, exactly. This is the
will
water
get
scene.
hired just to do like buildings crumble, and it's it's kind of crazy. There's like specialties in VFX now. It's like facial animation. They're like, oh, we got hired just to do Thanos's face. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
somebody else
I
did
know,
the body. It's like what? Like, what?
yeah, like I
It's
know
kind
in
of
one of the
crazy.
Avengers, I was seeing behind the scenes or like I think it was a quarter crew maybe. Like the guy was like, I just did this building, that was it. That's the whole thing I did. This building getting destroyed. I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Oh
Yeah,
snap,
and I
that's
just
pretty
used
cool.
the asset I used on a different project, you know, and I just tailored it to, you know, it's like I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of VFX houses are doing that, and rightfully so. I mean, if you're doing all these movies for these companies, and you just did like a movie where you did like the buildings falling, and then another VFX house was like, "Hey, we need one building falling. Can you do it for us?" And you're like, "Hey, yeah." You just take an asset and change it a little bit, and hey, bada boom,
Yeah.
you know, it's done.
Yeah. And it's like I like the way you did this. So might as well just keep doing that one thing and just keep going on with it and become bigger that way. Um but
It's
yeah.
even crazy now. Like VFX is used just for like regular, like you said, drama shows and stuff like that. I don't know if you saw the show Mindhunter. It's like a thriller show about hunting down serial killers on Netflix. I
Mm,
highly recommend it by David Fincher. And they used VFX just to change the background so it looked like the 60s, I think it's set in. So they would
oh, okay.
change this, they would use VFX to change the sidewalk to make it look like how it would look back
Right.
then. They would use VFX to change the skyline so it would look more like it's in New York and stuff like that. So VFX is, I mean, VFX is even being used to touch up actors and stuff. So it's like VFX is used for everything now, every little thing. And there's no way it's going to go away. I mean, the only thing is, I think there needs to be a clear understanding of when to use it and when not to use it. I mean, look at do you watch The Mandalorian?
Yeah, I seen it. Yep. Watched it.
Like, I think it's awesome what they're doing at Disney now with VFX. Like, they're using the volume when they need it, and that way the actors can react. For those of you who don't know what the volume is, it's like a huge room. All the walls, the ceilings, the ground is, well, not the
Hmm.
ground, but the walls and the ceilings are LED, so they in real time render environments in the background and it reacts to the camera motion, so actors can react to it, which means they can't be messing around in pre-production and be like, oh, we haven't designed this yet, but hey, we'll just figure it out in post. No, they have to figure out in pre-production so that the actors and the director will have it on the day of shooting, and
Yeah,
so the camera
exactly.
can react to it. And they're using not just VFX, they're using miniatures. The Razor Crest, the ship of the Mandalorian, was a miniature. Many of the shots were miniature shots, and they're just using a what's it called, a remote control, like a time controlled pass of the camera. So it's just
Oh,
uh
okay.
the ship sitting on the thing and the camera's like whizzing by to give it the illusion that the ship is going by. And I'm like, that's amazing. And you can see all the work that they did into the miniature and stuff. I'm like, that's a perfect example of how you can merge the two mediums together. Not everything needs to be CGI.
Yeah, it's really great.
Like,
Did you see did you see
but
the set did you see the set of Mandalorian, like with the big screen? I forgot what they used now. Oh my god.
the volume,
It's what's it, what is that?
the volume.
Oh yeah, oh that's what's called. Okay.
Yeah, it's called the volume.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that looked amazing. As soon as I saw that the first time, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah,
So
it's
it makes things real easy. I think they used
Unreal Engine.
oh man, yeah, Unreal Engine, and it's like live edited, like so
Oh
you
yeah,
leave a scene, you turn
yeah.
it
It's crazy because they got like VFX guys in the background,
right.
and they could just move like rocks around and scenes
Mm-hmm.
around and stuff. Like maybe they change a close up, and they'll be like, you know what? Can we move that? And they could just, yo, it's crazy, man. It's phenomenal. And now this type of technology is becoming more accessible to the consumer because I mean you can download the Unreal engine on your computer. I can do it on mine. Like it's all about figuring out how to do it on a smaller scale. You can use projectors. You don't have to use LED panels. You can use projectors and stuff like that. But it's amazing, man. And when I saw that, I was like, yo, it's only going to be a matter of time before they start doing this for stage productions.
Right.
Because really,
Yeah.
it's just a
Oh,
big ass TV projecting something. But I'm sure in stage productions it wouldn't be like reacting to like because there's no camera. It'll probably just be like backgrounds and then they'll change it and da, da, da. But I mean, like actually, I'm kind of surprised that stage productions haven't done that
well,
already.
it's well in the class I was visual effects class I was in. I forgot what the teacher's name was already, but we went to uh was it projection mapping
Mm.
for different sets for different plays in Wilmington.
Oh yeah, I
So I
have
went with
seen a couple plays that use projectors
yeah projection
for this
mapping
stuff.
like that. So we did that. We did like CGI made models for the projection mapping, and we did like different cameras and projections, like six of them throughout the whole stage.
Mm.
And it was sort of frozen. So like when the pillars come up and everything, so it was really cool. Actually, I was like, wow, this is a
Yeah, I
way
would.
different.
I can't wait to get back to the stage, but I would love that, man. That would be awesome, man. But yeah, it's technology the way it is now. It's. I think I really like what Disney's doing at Lucasfilm with the merging the two mediums together and getting back to
Mm,
miniatures because it's amazing what people can do with miniatures and all the detail and all they got to do is just have like a controlled camera just to do shots. I mean just look if you haven't just look at the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings, not the Hobbit, not the Hobbit trilogy, the Lord of the Rings movies, and it'll blow your mind. Because when I first found out that those were miniatures, I was like, yo, that's insane. That's
yeah, that's
that's insane, man.
like there's so much to be explored in miniatures still. Like, oh my god, you can still do so much with them in films today. It doesn't have to all be just visual effects through the computer.
Yeah, all the
So
castles, all the buildings, everything in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is miniatures because they just didn't have the technology for it. And then they would add like CGI like people for the
mm-hmm.
battles and stuff like that. But it was it's might be a little time consuming, but when you factor in the fact like Christopher Nolan, like for Dark Knight Rises, he crashed a real plane and
Yeah,
then in Tenet he crashed a real plane. It's like the time is pretty much the same when it comes to using a real plane versus a miniature plane. I'm pretty sure, like building
right.
a detailed miniature and then destroying it. I feel like the time. Oh yeah, the Matrix Trilogy too.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
they came out. They were shot around the same time that the Lord of the Rings movies were shot, so the technology wasn't there. So most of that stuff was miniatures. I'm like, it looks amazing. And let me ask you this: Do you think, do you think it's easier to upscale an older movie for 4K release if it was used as a miniature, if there were miniatures as opposed to CGI?
Mm,
Or do you think it would be easier with CGI because it's just like math and numbers, or you have to find the raw files and just rebuild things? I don't know.
I think it
Or
would just
would
be
that be
easier with
more time consuming?
for if you want to do it in 4K. I think it'd just be easier for CGI, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably because everything is just
yeah.
ones and zeros, and you just use math to upscale it.
And so much flexibility when it comes to sizing if you use CGI. Like
Yeah,
it just depends
yeah.
on your computer at that point, if it's smoking or on fire or not. You know, if you have a using a laptop under half a film.
Yeah. For
Um,
miniatures, I feel like for an older film, they would. I mean, obviously, it's going to be digitized, but they would just have to digitize it. And if there's textures that's
right.
not there, they'll just add them digitally or something like that.
Yeah, they have to remake all those textures again, and that just might be more time consuming just to make or find them somewhere.
Yeah, I would really
Oh,
be curious to see how they digitized and upscaled the Lord of the Rings trilogy because
mm-hmm.
most of that work was miniatures. And I want to see if like they did any touch ups or anything like that. Well, of course they did. They had to have. But
Yeah,
I wonder
that
if they
definitely.
just took like 3D models and replaced them instead of upscaling the miniatures. But I really wonder if they have that behind the scenes of that because that would be interesting.
Yeah, this stuff to look into. Have you seen the behind the scenes of what's that one movie with the guys in the computer? It's really old.
Tron?
Tron. Yes, Tron. You seen
Bro,
that's the
the
Tron?
original Tron one,
Original
that
Tron.
is some tedious work. Every
Like I heard,
single
I saw a
frame
video.
had to be
Yeah,
cut. Oh my
yeah. Like I heard they just had to like use actual ones and zeros and just guess until they kept finding it the
Shout out
right
to Florida
combination.
crew because they showed you how
Oh
um
right, they did do that. Yeah.
the light cycles, that scene was literally math. There was no
Yes.
3D models or nothing. It was literally math. They put it in the computer. Then I think it was like they said the next day or a couple of days after it, they would just have to watch it to see if it was right. That's
Yep. Yep.
insane.
I'm just
That's
like
insane, bro.
so much back and forth. Oh my, I couldn't do that. I don't
They
know if
had to
you do
hire
that today.
literal mathematicians for a Hollywood movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, based like the space people basically, science,
Yeah,
rocket scientists.
yeah, man. That's crazy. Could you imagine dedicating your life to the advancement of science and getting people to the moon, and then you get hired to do a Hollywood movie, and then on top of that, not only do you get hired to do the movie, but the movie is panned by critics and it doesn't do well
Yeah.
at the box office, and then your work is not appreciated until like 20, 30 years later when people are like, you know what, Tron was actually ahead of its time and it was a great movie. It's
Yeah, it's
like
heartbreaking.
go
Oh my god.
really, guys. like, like really.
And now it's like the opposite today because I don't know if you're in Frozen 2. The people who did the visual effects of the snow in Frozen 2 are like used as like weather people. They ask them for like some weather stuff, like some snow calculations, whatnot.
Really?
And
I didn't know
actually,
that.
yeah, so they're actually using like real life situations. They use them
Oh, that's
because it was
crazy.
just so real of that snow happening, like how it falls, how avalanche works. So in like real scenarios, they were asked like, "Hey, how would this happen?" If they could show us a scenario like that.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't even see Frozen 2, but
Me neither.
that's crazy.
Me neither.
Well, that's because we're grown men, you know. So
Yeah, I was like, I had
we
no
don't have
reason to watch
kids,
it.
so
I'm surprised I seen Frozen one,
I, I
but
know,
visually
right?
it looks.
I saw it because my godson wanted me to see it when he was young. So,
Mm, but visually,
but
I hear it was pretty awesome. So
yeah,
I should
that's
probably.
kind of crazy, man. Like even for movies like that are like animated movies. So the whole thing is VFX. You know, like some of the stuff that's come out lately is just revolutionized. Like Toy Story was the first animated feature film. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I can't
And
believe that.
you can't believe like the amount of work that they had to do for that. Like if you watch the behind the scenes, even like I still point to 2018's Spider-Verse, man. Like
Mm.
the way they
That was
merged
game changer.
2D with 3D and drawings, like that's amazing. And they I don't know if they ever did it, but at the time that the movie came out, they were talking about patenting the process of doing that to make it the way it looked. And
Oh, really?
I was like, they better, man. that, the amount of
Yeah,
work, like they had to write an algorithm to um so every time the 3D model of a character would move or their face would react, they had to build an
mm.
algorithm for like 2D lines to appear to like crunch up their forehead and do
Oh,
their
that's smart.
indents.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's so much work, man. It's
Yeah, just
crazy.
writing the script for that. Oh my god! And just
Oh
every
my
time
god.
someone does something,
That's like hardcore
wow.
programming and be like, hey, when his eyebrow goes up like this, there's some 2D marks that should go up to emphasize his motion. It's like, what the
Yeah, that's a
hell?
whole different job in general. I don't even know what job title that would be.
And you would think like maybe you would just do it by hand, but I guess for those like that was in production for like 4 or 5 years, and the script was in like constant motion, and sometimes animations
Mm,
would change. So you would want something to automatically add 2D lines or something instead of having to do it by
right.
hand because it could change later on. You know, you just can't do something, draw it out, and then be like, oh, you know what? We're changing that. It's like, yo, we just drew everything by hand for this. What are you talking about? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So
it's
they can't.
that movie's amazing. I still watch it from time to time. I'm still at all. I mean, it's only what 4 years old, but still, it's just
Yeah, it's not that old yet.
it's
It's still
amazing,
really good.
man. It's amazing, man. Like even the Incredibles,
Mm,
the first
Mrs.
Incredibles with
Incredible.
Mrs. Like the way they had to manipulate her body to change into anything. People don't realize how much work was put into that. How they
Yeah,
had
that
to
stretch.
stretch her body to a parachute, to a sphere, to elongate. And I'm like, yo, that's if you watch the behind the scenes of that, you're like, it's like all these animation movies coming out, they're not really just straightforward. They always have to like revolutionize something to tell the story, whether
Yeah,
a
they always have
character
like
has to do something or not.
yeah, they always have like recreate a wheel or something just to come up with the movie, or like come up with different problem solving
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah,
Like I don't know, like for Transformers, I don't know how they did that. Like similar to Mrs. Incredible, where they have to like make every movement precise. Makes sense actually. So each part of the car they transform into actually is a part of the transformation afterwards. So like each piece has a
yeah.
purpose.
I saw that. I think I told the story before, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a VFX artist. I always wanted to do that. And then I watched the behind the scenes of the first Transformers movie, which came out in '07. So the DVD probably came out in '08. I
Hmm.
watched that and I was like, nah,
And
nah,
that ain't me.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm pretty sure it came out in '07. But I was like,
Yeah.
nah, I can't do that because every single part of the car had to be repurposed and transformed to something else. And they literally had to build every single part down to the little screws. And I'm like, nah, I'm good, son. I'm good. I'll
Yeah,
find
that's
something else to do in films. It's
yeah.
crazy.
I don't know. When I saw that movie, I think that's what made it hype me up even more about it. Just doing it, just because I was like, oh my god, I want to just know how to do this and learn how to actually make those parts.
Nah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
good,
know.
son. And then watching behind the scenes of him and they're showing him shots that they finish. He's like, nah, this
Hmm.
isn't finished. The lighting has to be a little brighter here. Should be bouncing off this window. Like Michael Bay really does have an eye for VFX. That's probably why, even though however you feel about his movies, the VFX are spot on. Like
Yeah,
they're spot on. And he just goes through each frame, meticulous as it is, and just like, hey, this looks good, but maybe we put a little smudge right there on the windshield. Oh, look at that. Maybe put his arm over there. Like that's he did that for every robot, for every frame of the shot, and I'm just like, wow, man, you can have that. That's
Yeah, and it's
crazy,
like
bro.
that's a very important thing about visual effects is everything can't be perfect. Like it's even though it's computer based and everything's like shiny and whatnot, it can't be perfect when put in a movie. It has to be like grunge, has to be like some blood splatter somewhere.
Has to be
Has
some
to be like
dents and everything.
imperfections just to make it actually good.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, it's just to make it
To
perfect,
make it more real, it can't be pristine. It has to be muddy and dirty and uh,
Yeah, like life. Yes.
nothing's worse
Yeah.
than like you're watching a movie, you see this CG model of a character, and it's like it's too smooth.
Yeah, it's too
It's too
clean. Like
clean. It's like
my cars looks like
unless
that.
the story is pointing towards it, kind of like Wally, where the girl robot was
Mm,
like supposed to be like this perfect robot and everything, and it made sense for her. But for other things, like if you watch like The Hobbit, the one orc Azog, he when you first see him or throughout the film, he just seemed too clean. His skin was too smooth,
yeah, it seemed
and
right.
I read that he was a last minute addition because originally all the orcs were prosthetics, and then Peter Jackson, for whatever reason, was like, "Nah, I'm going to make them CGI," and it was a last minute addition to add all the CGI orcs. That's why if you watch The Hobbit, some of the orcs are prosthetics, and they're talking to CGI orcs, and I'm like, "Why is there fake orcs talking to real orcs? What's going on?" Like,
Clearly tell a difference. That's
you
what I'm
gotta
saying. It
pick
needs time.
one thing. Like, if you're gonna remove one orc and make it CGI, you should make all the orcs CGI. But whatever. And originally, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to do those movies back when they were only supposed to be two movies, and I really wish we could have seen his vision because, for one thing, Doug Jones and Ron Perlman would have been in the movie because he always works with them, and
Mhm.
two, Guillermo del Toro loves using real stuff. He loves to use practical stuff, and he loves creating creatures through prosthetics and stuff like that.
Right.
So I mean, just look at the Hellboy 1 and 2, Pan's
Ooh.
Labyrinth, Shape of Water. He loves using real prosthetics and real actors. Doug Jones is his favorite actor to use because Doug Jones is like a contortionist expert, and he's an
Hmm.
actor, and he can contort his body anyway. So they just slap a bunch of prosthetics on him, and like he played the monster in Shape of Water. He played Abe Sapien in Hellboy 1 and 2. So it would have been interesting. I really think we would have got a lot less CGI with the Hobbit if Gidio del Toro filmed them. And I also read that I read a review in The Hobbit, and someone was talking about, oh, here's another director who got too big for its own bridges and was like, I know what's best for a production, and I'm going to add all this stuff and da da da.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, I mean, considering the fact that The Hobbit is such a small book, I know the studio forced him to make three movies, but why was each movie almost 3 hours, bro?
I know, right? You have to be so happy about it, making it so long.
Like
Oh my
now, the
god.
Lord of the Rings movies needed to be 4 hours. The extended editions are the best way to watch them because of
Okay.
how massive those books are, and I highly recommend them because they're amazing. But The Hobbit, the Hobbit movies are almost 3 hours long, based on the smallest book that Tolkien wrote, and I'm like, why, man? There's so much added CGI, and then he thought he
Hmm.
was smarter than everybody. He was like, 48 frames per second is the way to watch a movie, and
48.
yeah, remember that's why everything looks so weird because
Okay, yeah.
everything was in 48 frames per second, and I mean, some movie theaters still projected it at 24. But for those
Okay.
who don't know, anything you watch, any film you watch, is 24 frames per second, unless
Hmm.
you're watching like YouTube videos or whatever. They're 30 frames per second. But the human eye is built the way we're keen to wanting 24 frames per second for films, and he just kept pushing that 48 frames per second. Like that
Oh
mixed with
my god.
the bloatness of those movies and the story and the too much CGI, it just ruined the Hobbit movies. And I don't know. I know there was some studio interference too, but it was
Yeah, yeah.
like he was mad that they made him make 3 movies. He only wanted to do two. So why did you add so much? Why were they 3 hours a piece? Almost 3 hours a piece with all this bad CGI. I watched the movies because I love the elves when they fight. So I really watched
Oh.
Hobbit 2 and 3 because I love the elf battle scene, the
Hmm.
way they're shot and everything. Um, they're really good, and even the CGI for the elves fighting and stuff is good. It's just the creatures themselves in those movies are just bad, man, just bad.
Right. You know, I think a movie that did creatures pretty well actually was Planet of the Apes. They did the creatures really
Oh,
well.
we gotta talk about Planet of the Apes. I know this is a long one, but we got. Oh my god,
We got some time for, of
they
course.
just got better and better each
Yeah,
movie, man.
each movie is improved that visual effect.
And we're talking about the latest Planet of the Apes. I'm a huge
Yep.
fan of the old ones and the new ones. I've seen all the old ones. I have the box set up there, the 1970s ones, and
Hmm.
and then when I saw the, my wife is not into films, but she loves the new Planet of the Apes that came out, and we watch them often together. We have all three of the
Yes.
movies, and just I will say that there should be a category. I mean, Andy Serkis deserves some kind of award. He
Oh
played
yeah, for
Gollum
that.
in the
100%.
the Lord of the Rings movies. He played uh he played King Kong in the King Kong movie that Peter Jackson did. He
Hmm.
and his portrayal of Caesar.
Oh my, it's so freaking good how he does
It's
it. It's just
and yes, he need that's why I think there should be a separate category for like motion capture performances because not
mm,
only does the actor have to be good, the animators and the CGI compositors have to be good at recreating that performance and enhancing that performance for the characters. Because when you look at a human face, it doesn't look exactly like an ape face. So you have to fudge some things for the performance to fit.
yep.
Even like Benedict Cumberbatch when he played Smaug for the Hobbit movies. They have to
Oh
fudge
yeah,
some things because he did motion capture. But yeah, those Planet of the Apes. Oh my gosh, their visual effects, man. Like,
they were so good. Yep, and like how they interacted with different objects in the scene and everything. It just
oh
fits
my
so
god.
well. The
Have
lighting
you
was
watched them recently?
recently. It's been like almost a year since I seen the newest one.
Okay, that's pretty recently. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's pretty
recent.
recent.
Same for
I
me.
love
It's
the
been like
first
a
one.
year. Like me and my wife, we pick a time to watch. Like we rewatch the
Hmm.
trilogy, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah.
It's because of those two movies, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and
Hmm.
what was it? I forgot the third one, but it's because of those two movies. Matt Reeves wrote and directed those two movies. That's why I have faith for the new Batman movie that's coming out. Because I'm like,
Okay.
the way he wrote and shot those two movies, especially the last movie where Caesar, spoiler alert, Caesar dies. It's
Yep.
basically it's basically the story of Moses. Caesar is Moses,
Hmm.
uh, and how he never. Well, actually, Caesar does get to see the promised land. He just doesn't get to interact with it. He sees it and then he dies.
Yep. He
Whereas
didn't get the experience.
Moses never gets to go to the promised land. But it was just an amazing story, and the way it was shot, directed, the writing, it was amazing, and the CGI. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh! Like I'm so glad that they went the CGI route because you
Oh,
got
for
more
sure.
realistic portrayals of the apes, as opposed to I know we like to pretend it never happened, but Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes that
Yes.
came out in '01 with Mark
Oh my
Wahlberg.
god, I was just thinking about that too. I was like, oh no. I
Now,
remember me and my mom used to watch that all the time.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I watched that with my mom too. I was 11 when it came out
Yep.
because she knew I was a fan of the original one. She actually introduced me to the original ones. But man, though, there was nothing really wrong with the apes. The prosthetics were great. The
Mm.
costumes were great. It was just the story and the visual direction. There was a
Yeah, maybe
time
that was
when
it.
Yeah, yeah. There was a time when studios thought Tim Burton could tell any story, and I'm like,
Hmm.
he has a certain style where some stories wouldn't fit. You know,
They
like
tried it. They tried it. Yeah, it's worth
they
it.
tried it. I'm glad because it was supposed to be a sequel. I'm glad they didn't go that route. But I know
Yeah.
the performances were still good. Tim Roth was great. Michael Clark Duncan, R.I.P. was great. But it was, and the costumes were great. But it was just too. It wasn't there. But the new Planet of the Apes movie, I feel like the CGI still holds up to this day. The motion capture stuff still holds up to this day. And I know for the second movie, they revolutionized the motion cap technology because all the scenes were outside in the woods and they actually shot them like that. So
Hmm.
they had to put the sensors up in the trees to capture the motion cap suits and stuff. And
Yeah.
that had never been done before. And it was dark, it was damp out there, it was raining for most of the scenes. And shout out to those actors who had to shoot those scenes with the motion captors and actors and then have to recreate it with none of the actors on set. Just none of the
Hmm.
actors who are supposed to be apes were allowed to be on set because they had to have a clean plate. So the actors just had to act like they were there when they really weren't. It was amazing. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but it's cool to hear that you actually think that the CGI was great in those movies.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like a man. It's a really big misconceptions like how easy people think CGI is, but no, it takes a lot of work in like the scenes already, like what they did with the projections in that movie too, in the motion captures right. That's a lot of problem solving just for like a simple scene like that.
Not to mention, motion capture isn't just like the actor acts it out, and then you take
Yeah.
that and put a 3D model on it. You gotta fudge some things because sometimes,
Some things, yeah, that's for
yeah,
sure.
like it will just go wonky, like the motion cap. And shout out Jason Clark who played Malcolm in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, because there was that scene where he was brought to Caesar and he keeps getting
Uh,
pushed down by the apes.
yeah.
He had to do that scene multiple takes by himself. I saw the behind the scenes where he's literally pushing himself on the ground in the mud and pretending like apes are pushing him down and he's talking to nobody. And I'm like, shout out, that's some grade A acting like right there. Very very frustrated, but man, did it come out great. And man,
Yeah, I wonder what
shout
his
out to
acting
him,
style
bro.
is. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. But yo, this was a good one, man.
Yep.
Shout out to all my VFX artists out there. We appreciate y'all. I know it might seem like we don't, but we appreciate y'all. We know that you're overworked and underpaid. Just hang in there. The industry's going to turn around for you guys at some point.
At
No,
some
but
point, still waiting. Still get
yeah,
there.
at some point, especially now that every single thing, even like soap opera type of stuff, needs CGI. But yeah, this was another good one, my nomads. Be creative. Peace.
See ya.